Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Valley Bible Studies podcast.
Yay. I don't know why
number
I did
two.
that.
There's a lot of things when you do it, I ask that same question.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
I live with me. It happens all the time.
Poor Baxter.
Uh-huh.
So, welcome back. Super excited to be back. Going in talking about faith. First, before we do that, a little dose of dopamine. Luke, I'll let you go first, my guy.
Okay, I'll go first.
Yeah, act like it was your idea.
Let's see. It was not my idea. This bit was KT's idea.
No, I meant
Bit,
you going
segment,
first.
whatever. But the bit was also your idea.
Whatever.
Let me think. So sometimes I work from home, and sometimes I work from the church office, but sometimes I like to work out in town because, like, usually if in certain places, especially if people see me with like a computer out and like a Bible and a Bible commentary, some people will ask, and so that's a way to generate like evangelistic conversations sometimes. So I was doing that this past week at Chick-fil-A, and
that's Chick-fil-A for you foreigners.
And at Chick-fil-A, the one here in Salem that's like not even 5 minutes from my house, Miss Kim, who is one of our fellow members at Westside and also like the best ever. By the way, David, her husband, might be starting a podcast of his own that's also
Really?
about the Bible. Yeah,
Oh.
So we might have another sister podcast pretty soon that we can put on the website and stuff. But
Sweet.
shout out to Steve and Kirk, who we already have on there. But
Booyah.
Kim was working that day, and at like 2 in the afternoon, so I had already eaten like my lunch there, but at like 2 in the afternoon, she brings me one of their like key lime pie lemonades that they have like seasonally right now.
I thought it was a milkshake.
No, it's a lemon. I'm pretty sure it's like a lemon slush kind of thing.
What?
But she brings me one, and she was like, "We made an extra, so here you go."
Was it good?
It was good. It was not my favorite.
I'm not much of a key lime kind of person.
The greatest thing that Chick-fil-A has ever done is introduce the peppermint milkshake at Christmas time. That thing is
you ready?
a banger.
I disagree.
Okay, you're wrong. Anyway,
I'm not a peppermint guy. Have you ever had the peach milkshake?
I have. That's also a banger.
Ooh-wee.
But the key lime was good, and that was my dose of dopamine because I didn't expect it, and I got a free dessert.
Yeah. Well, and it's just it was very nice of Kim to go out of her
And
way
like
to
Sister in
give it to-
Christ,
Yes.
giving it to me. Yeah.
So mine isn't something that happened, like it didn't happen the other day. It's more of a generalization kind of thing. When you're, especially now in the wintertime, when you're really cold and
Wait,
what?
you're really cold and you get in bed.
No.
That's also a good one.
It is a good one. I agree with that, but it's not the one I have in mind.
Okay.
When you're really cold and you get in a hot shower. Like you're so cold that to where when the water, by the time it hits your leg, the water's cold.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then when you get out, you have that neutral,
Like warm,
I
clean
feel
feeling.
good
Yeah.
feeling.
Mm-hmm.
That's my dose.
Yep.
Of
That's a
dopamine.
fair one. That's a fair one, for
Because
sure.
you just feel warm.
Especially as somebody who just adopted a puppy in the wintertime, like
Yeah.
being warm and clean at the same time is really nice. Because having a puppy in the wintertime means that you're rarely both at once. So like most of the time I'm picking one.
Here's the thing, though. Baxter's going to get pretty big, right?
Yes, he is.
And I'm assuming since he's a lab mix, he's going to be a cuddler.
Yes, he is. He
Yeah.
already is a cuddler.
Oh, so you're going to be warm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Good
but
for you.
not clean. So like
That's
you
true.
gotta pick.
Yeah, you pick your Pick
But
which
having
one you want.
both is nice. So yes.
Yeah, enjoy it while you can, right?
Uh-huh.
Great. I love those.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Yep.
So, as we get into talking about these new topics, which I'm telling you, like the ones we have written out so far, I am super excited for.
This is the first in our first series. So the gospel was kind of its own,
right.
like, duh,
Thing.
you start with that.
Right.
The next 4 are a series of things about how salvation works.
Right. How to be, like what you need in order to be a Christian to obtain salvation.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we've got 3 series planned out so far. This is the first one.
And I'm really looking forward to them.
Yes.
So this first one being faith.
Yes.
So, my friend Luke.
That's me.
Define, what is faith? Define
What
it.
is faith? Do you want the technical answer?
I want your answer.
Okay. The technical answer is faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That's Hebrews 11:1.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Textbook. What does that mean?
I don't know.
All right, so.
This has been a great episode. I
guess.
want to thank everybody for listening.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks. I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. No, so I have this book. It's all about the fruit of the Spirit. It's by Johnny Skaggs Jr. This is an excellent book. I'm using it for our Bible class. It's wonderful. And when we get to faith, I love the way he broke it down, right? So the first thing that he puts in there is what faith refers to in that God is the one true God.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of people are going to believe in a God. A lot of people are going to believe in multiple gods. A lot of people are going to believe in something that they don't really refer to as a God, but they refer to as a higher being. Mm-hmm. This is how we can solidify that
what
God,
the Christian faith is.
Yes, and how God is the one true God.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is the step saying, I believe in God.
Yeah.
So, but he takes it one step further. He doesn't just say, I believe in God. He says, I also believe God.
Yeah.
Which to me, to look at it that way is, it gives a bigger picture, because now it's not necessarily the whole what's out there, who's controlling everything. It's not only that I believe in God, I know who he is, I know what he's done, but I believe in him. I know that he has the power to do it.
Well, that's like the two halves of, so Moses in Deuteronomy 6 starts one of his speeches to the Israelites with 6:4, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. So I believe that God exists. I believe there is one.
Right.
And then verse 5, which Jesus later quotes as the greatest commandment, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So like that's sort of reflected in those two together.
I agree.
Like I don't just believe in God, I believe who he is and will do things about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
What he also does is how he splits up that verse, Hebrews 11, verse 1. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Mm-hmm. You go to any Christian that knows the basics at least, and you ask them what is faith, they're going to give you that answer.
Probably.
But then a lot of times if you're going to ask them, well, what does that mean? They're like, that's a funky looking verse.
Yeah.
It's hard to dissect.
A lot of words that we don't use every day.
Right, and especially in the order in which they're spoken.
Right.
So one, faith is the substance of things hoped for, right? So the substance, is the assurance. It's the confidence that we have something to hope for.
Yeah.
And then later on, two, the evidence of things not seen. The evidence is the conviction, right? It's the certainty.
Substance and conviction.
Right.
I like that.
And so it's the things that we haven't seen yet. However, we do have written proof that it is there.
There's something to believe in, and I'm sure about it.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah, I did too, enough to where I highlighted it in my book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really a huge highlighter, so if I highlight something, I'm like, man.
I don't highlight or write in my Bible. That's just a weird thing of mine. Like, I don't write in it. I write, like, Post-it notes and put them in there sometimes.
I get that. Yeah. I have a Bible that I've written a lot in, and I have a new one that I keep. I keep it at home.
Yeah.
Because it's really nice. I don't want to ruin it.
Right.
That's the one I read at home. The one I carry around with me, I got stuff written in it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, one of the first points to make about like biblical faith on the basis of that definition, like substance and evidence, there's something to believe in, and I'm sure about it, is the fact that, well, first of all, that verse starts Hebrews 11. Which is called the Hall of Faith, or the Hall of Fame of Faith, if you want to be wordy about it. And a couple of things there. First of all, down in verse 6, you can expand on the definition of faith a little bit by talking about verse 6, because it says, for they who come to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. So there are three things to believe. Number one, that he is, that God exists. Number two, that he's a rewarder. So God exists, and that's a good thing, right? Like, he's a loving God, he's a nurturing God, he is somebody who wants to have a relationship with his people. And then number three, he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. So those good promises that God makes are made to the people who pursue him in their faith. It's not just a passive belief, it's a, I know who he is, I trust who he is, I'm sure about this, I'm sure enough about this that I'm going to do something about it. And that's the broader point of Hebrews 11, because in all of the different cases that it talks about, it doesn't just say, this person believed God, period. It says, by faith, this person did this.
Yeah.
So, like, by faith, Moses didn't consider the riches of Egypt greater than rewards in heaven, but he left Egypt and then came back and led the Israelites out. All of them are like that. Like, they did something with that belief.
It's a bigger picture of then, because that's, I don't know, man. You look in the world today in 2025. I know that I'm not going to get used to that for a while.
No.
Yet we say that every year. Anyway, that's the bigger picture, because there's so many people in the modern world, especially in America, that say, I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. Jesus has saved me. All power to him. I trust him. But then what do they do with that?
I think that's a symptom of living in the richest and most powerful country in the world.
It is.
Because
this is weird deja vu, because I'm pretty sure we said this exact same thing at some point last year.
Probably. But like,
you are
many
right,
people, like, as a parallel example, so many people say that they believe in the foundational points of America, like free speech, liberty, all of the different things that, like, the founding fathers talked about.
And yet a lot of that's being stripped away, and they're okay with that.
Well, and like,
I don't want to get political. Wow. My bad. My bad, guys.
It's true. But where I was going with that was, that's a lot easier to say you believe than to take up arms to defend. Right? Like,
yes, but also there's a United States military that if you want to fight that, you're not going to win it.
That's true. You're not going to win it.
No.
But I'm saying,
I do see what you're saying.
Average citizen thinks those things, like, believes that in those things.
It's also context.
But it's really hard. Like, they would be hard pressed to prove it if they really had to.
Yeah.
I think.
I agree.
And the same thing is true of Christian faith. Like, it's much easier to say, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, I believe in the Holy Spirit, than it is to actually live for them.
And so I think it's a process, and I'm going back to the book for this one because, like, again, this is something that I highlighted, so whoa.
That means it's a big deal.
To me at least.
Yeah.
So there are 3 necessary actions to obedience when it comes to your faith.
Yeah.
1, it's doing what God said to do.
Mm-hmm.
2, doing what God said to do in the way that God said to do it.
That's a big one.
And 3, doing what God said to do for the reason he said to do it.
Yeah.
Boom. Right? That's a mic drop kind of statement.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to, preacher man, if you wanted to,
I
feel like that's a sermon outline.
That is a sermon
sitting
outline.
there waiting
and
for you.
It's also, you could call that an outline of spiritual maturity in a way, because
I agree with that.
I feel like those 3
fair
points
statement.
get harder as you go.
Yes, because that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Because again, it's a process.
Because
the very first thing is believing in God.
So just to take an example, like the way that we worship. It's one thing to worship God. It's another thing to worship God in the right way. It's another thing and the correct thing to worship God in the right way for the right reason.
Yes. And
there are people who worship him in the wrong way,
mm-hmm.
but with the right attitude.
Correct.
There are people who worship him in the right way with the wrong attitude.
Correct.
It's hard to do both.
It is. And
it's doable, but you've got to be thinking about it.
Again, so like I said, it's a process. And in that process, you have to have good leadership.
Yes.
We are fortunate enough here at Westside. We have strong leadership to where
we're sort of hitting on all the different series that we're going to do down the road. Like, there's a worship series coming. There's a leadership series coming.
But
we'll get there.
Doing what he said to do, check. Doing what he said to do and the way he said to do it, that leadership, that's where we kind of, we set that example from what the Bible says. And then lastly, the reason. And that's more of an individual sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we can't, I can't force you to worship God. Even I could bring up the setting, I could bring up anything, in this auditorium that I want. I can't make you do it. And if I do make you do it,
something's wrong.
Right. It's not going to be a successful worship.
Yeah. The other like arena that makes me think of is in the home. Right? Like,
oh yeah.
First of all, do we have family time that's devoted to God? Second of all, are we doing it in a productive way? Third of all, are we doing it because everybody else is doing it and we're expected to, or are we doing it like genuinely for the good of our family and our relationship with Christ?
Let's bring this full circle.
Okay.
That goes back to our individual faith.
Yes.
What is our purpose in which our faith is planted? If we have our faith planted in God, that's going to be our purpose.
Mm-hmm.
If our faith isn't really put where it's supposed to be, our mind is going to wander.
The interesting thing about being a family minister at the same time that I'm a youth minister is that I think the home is the best litmus test both for individual faith and for the strength of the church as a whole. I think how your family is doing, like all of the members of your family together are doing in their faith, tells you a lot about where you are individually.
Yeah.
I also think how the individual homes inside of a congregation tell you a lot about where the congregation is. It's a good litmus test going both ways.
Yeah, because I also think, and this depends on the size of the congregation.
Yeah.
The bigger the congregation, the wider that spectrum is going to be.
Right.
The smaller the congregation, I think it might differ. But regardless, you're going to see both sides of the coin.
And that's not to say that, like...
Because no church is perfect.
Right. That's not to say that families who appear to be doing better than others, A, are more valuable than each other.
Absolutely not.
Or B, actually are. Because you can look like you're doing great and not be. That's just one of those things.
It is. Because a lot of people, again, especially in modern America, want to put on
a happy face.
Yes. Mm-hmm. They want the appearance that I'm doing great, my spouse is doing great, my kids are doing great, we are doing great.
We're fine.
We are fine. Everything is wonderful. And here's the thing. The closer, this is where the truth comes out, the closer you get to somebody, the more you're going to find out if that's true or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because surface level, if you don't really know them, everything's going to be, everything's fine. Everything's wonderful.
And I think also, and I'll get a little bit controversial by saying I think this is more of a male problem, especially when it comes to like a family setting. But there's also this need to look okay because you don't need help, right? I've got it figured out. Yeah. I've got it covered.
I get that.
That's not how faith works.
No.
If I always thought that I had it covered and I could do it on my own, I wouldn't need Jesus. Or I wouldn't think that I needed Jesus.
Right. So, okay. That's a good point. So moving forward, when we're looking at examples of faith.
Okay.
Like
I'm sure from the Bible?
Yeah. I mean, because ideally,
well, yeah.
That's where we're going to give us.
That's where you're going to get the best ones.
Right.
It's also the point of the podcast.
I would agree with that as well. I'm sure we have some, examples of our own in our lives, but I think it's best to look. What does the Bible have to say about it? The first one that comes to my mind, we were talking about it earlier before we started recording.
Yeah.
First one that comes to my mind is Job.
Yeah.
Legit, everything's thrown at this guy.
Yeah, his life is kind of terrible.
You're literally teaching why did I bring this one up? You're teaching a class on it.
That's true. I have been teaching on Job for what, like almost 2 months now?
Right.
And have a month left to go?
Yeah, and everything was thrown at him. Everything was taken from him.
And from Job's perspective, for no reason. Obviously, there are like cosmic things going on where you've got God and Satan having this argument. Right. But from Job's perspective, he's like, I've been put in this terrible situation. Everything's been taken from me, and there's no reason why. Right.
To me, I'm just sitting in the corner like, what did I do?
Yeah.
Because
which is kind of where he starts.
Yeah.
Like, when his 3 friends show up, he's just sort of like,
well,
I picture him in the fetal position, rocking back and forth. Like, how
hey,
did this happen?
How you doing? I don't know.
Yeah.
The way his wife is, people dying, he's hurting.
He's lost everything. He
has
possessions.
Nothing left.
Yeah.
And yet he remains faithful to God.
My favorite verse, probably my favorite single verse, Job 38 through 41, where God talks, is like some of the greatest poetry ever written. But probably my favorite single verse is Job 19:25 from the book of Job, where he says, For I know that my Redeemer lives and that he shall stand at last on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite verse for a couple reasons. Number one, that's faith.
Yeah.
Like, even when everything is terrible, I'm so sure about God being who he says he is that I'm a ride or die.
Yep.
My second reason that that's really cool is because that's fulfilled more literally than Job knows, right? Like, I know that my Redeemer lives and that he shall stand at last on the earth. What he means when he says that is, and his sense of justice is correct.
Right.
Like, he's going to be in charge regardless.
But little does he know.
But eventually, the Redeemer actually would stand on the earth.
Little does he know.
Which is just really cool.
That is cool.
Like, that's a cool wording.
I agree with that.
Okay, so example number 2. Let me think. Because there are also several in the written study, and I don't want to, like, stomp on the written study. Those are the 3 that are going through my brain right now.
Go read the written study.
Yeah. Shout out to me.
You?
Anyway. Whoops. Ooh, how about John? And specifically,
that's a good one.
go back like 2 podcast episodes to the end of last year. John, by the time Revelation is written. At the end of his life, he's on Patmos, so he's in exile. He's been cut off from his church family.
Everybody, yeah.
He's in exile. He's the last apostle left. The other 11
That's
and
tough.
Paul have all been killed
They're
for
all
the
dead.
faith.
Yeah.
That would make me want to give up. Like,
Yeah,
if I'm going to throw in the towel, it's going to be like, I've given my whole life for this, and it's just gotten worse.
You've
From
got
a physical
everybody
perspective.
that you could confide in, everybody that you could lean on
Is gone.
is gone. You're literally alone in exile.
Like, your only company is the Roman guards there to keep you there.
Right. I don't know. So I definitely see where you're going, like where you're coming with from this, because you're just there.
Well,
Fine.
and you have so much time to think.
You do.
Like,
I
how
don't
many
know.
sacrifices I've made, how many friends I've lost. Like, he's going through those 11 guys' names.
I feel like that's a fork in the road of you can either say, oh, what's the point? Like, I've come this far, what's the point? To where the other side is, I've come this far, why give up?
These guys died for something.
Yeah. Why give up? There's no reason for me to give up now.
So,
if I was going to give up, it would have been a long time ago.
So John has this disciple named Polycarp, and we actually have ancient copies of a document called the Martyrdom of Polycarp, because Polycarp ends up being burned at the stake because he's a Christian. But, yeah, not good. But when he's questioned for the last time, like, he's in the Colosseum being questioned for the last time, and they give him one last chance to recant and to say, like, I'm actually not a Christian, I made it all up. And that last chance that he's given, I don't remember exactly what he says, but he says something to the effect of, Jesus has been faithful to me for however many years, like 80 years that he'd been alive. Why would I betray him now?
Yeah.
That's the mentality.
Yeah, because you've gotten that far.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason, because in that really is the true test of faith, that he's gotten that far. He could so easily throw in the towel.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, when are we weakest in our faith?
When we're alone?
When nobody's around.
Yeah.
Nobody was around him. Like you said, it was the guards.
Yeah.
That was really it.
And they're probably pressuring him to
You're right.
quit.
It would have been so easy. And so I say this to my football players. I've said it to my students. The things that you can get easily are never worth it.
Yeah.
If it's easy, it's not worth it. Heaven isn't one of those things that's going to be easy to get.
Mm-hmm.
Salvation isn't going to be one of those things that's easy to get. The process itself has been made simple,
but not easy.
But
There's
that doesn't mean that
difference.
it's easy.
It's easy to
absolutely.
understand, not always easy to achieve.
Correct. It's not easy to execute.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different factors in our lives that
make it hard.
That are pulling us away
like
from
in
obeying.
John's case, he could get away with it.
Yeah.
Like, what if he recants his faith, but then just stays on Patmos and no one has to know?
No one. Yeah, exactly. Nobody has to know.
Yeah.
He could just easily do it. And he's like, oh, nobody's going to find out anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The history books are written. It's fine.
Right.
Somebody's going to know.
Yep.
That's another thing I always tell my kids. Somebody knows.
You can't get away with anything.
You think that you can get away with this. You
First
think you
of
can
all,
get away with something.
we live in the age of the internet, so
That
good
is
luck.
true.
But also, like, Solomon didn't live in the age of the internet, and the last verse of Ecclesiastes is, "For God will bring every secret thing into judgment, whether good or evil."
Right. So another wild thing about all of this is faith is from beginning to end.
Yes.
The faith begins in our faith that, one, there is a God. And
you
so
sort of have to get there first.
It goes back to the I believe God, or I believe in God. I also believe God.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also believe that in the end, Christ will be victorious.
Yes.
The Lord will be victorious.
Think about like how the Bible begins and ends, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then the last verses of Revelation are Christ inviting people to join in his victorious city.
Yes.
Faith from beginning to end.
Exactly. That kind of, as a Christian, it brings everything full circle.
Mm-hmm.
Because
that's one of the cool things, and again, we said this about Revelation a couple weeks ago, but the cool thing about Revelations is that it causes the Bible to end where it started, in a way. Like you're back to the perfect relationship with God in the perfect place.
So think about what we talked about this in the last episode, but the plan of salvation.
Uh-huh.
You hear the word, believe the word, repent, confess, and be baptized.
You just spoiled the series, but go on.
Deal with it.
Those are the next three for those.
Everything that you do with those steps, faith is involved.
Yeah.
Every single step.
Yeah.
And then the very last one, being faithful until the end.
It says that's faithful in the title. Like, right. Come on now.
Whether being my end or the end of the world, when Christ returns, it all revolves around faith.
If I don't have faith, why would I repent? If I don't have faith, why would I confess?
Exactly.
If I don't have faith, why would I be baptized? If I don't have faith, why would I
believe in the first place?
Well, right. And like, if I don't have faith, let's get real serious and specific with it. Why would I take the Lord's Supper every week? Because that doesn't make sense. Why would I worship the way that God wants me to worship instead of the way I want to worship?
Why would I sing? Why would I pray? Why would I talk about the gospel?
Why would I give money every week? Because like,
if you don't
have faith in God and the church,
then you're
yikes.
If you don't have faith in God and His church, and you contribute to the church, you're just, in your mind, you're wasting money.
It's silly to think about, but how many people is that true for?
Ooh. Oh, man.
I mean, I'm just saying.
I know, but you're right.
Yep.
There's a lot of people that
give because they have to, or give because it says to.
Yes. And we also go back to I'm fine, we're fine, everything's good, we're doing what we're supposed to.
Money can be a happy face, too.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And that's sad, again, that's sad to think about, but that is the reality of it.
Yeah.
People talk about Christ, but they don't live for Christ.
Yeah.
People will give their money, but they won't. They are doing it in the wrong way.
Yeah.
If that's the case.
And even then, like, I'll pay money to the church so that somebody can do the work and I don't have to.
Oh, man.
That's a rough one. That's a rough one.
Whoa.
I mean, I'm just saying.
I never thought of that.
It happens.
No, you're right. You're right. Because a lot of people do like taking the easy way out.
Yeah.
Like, and there's nothing really wrong with this, but the people that they don't even attempt to do a house project. They're just going to pay somebody.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Which, again, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm at least going to take a whack at it.
I'll at least try.
Because ultimately, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to fail miserably, and then I'll pay somebody to do it.
The leaky faucet becomes every pipe under my sink is destroyed.
Hey, yesterday I fixed a leaky faucet.
Wow, good for you.
I did. For now, I'm mortified that I just made it worse, and it's just going to like explode.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah. So fixed. We'll put an asterisk on that one.
You're the woodworker. I'm the plumber of the two of us. So
I hate plumbing.
Between the two of us, we'll get
mainly because like I have the knees of an 80-year-old.
Well, yeah.
I hate getting on my knees to fix stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's painful. It's terrible.
Especially with a dog like running over you.
Especially with a 1-year-old, man.
Yeah, that's true too.
Dude, I was doing it yesterday,
destroying something in the other room.
Well, no, she's hitting my back. And I at the time I couldn't tell if it was like "Daddy, hurry up" or like she was literally patting me on the back, like, "You're doing so great,
Good
Dad."
job, Dad.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's funny.
She does. She probably doesn't know.
Yeah, probably.
She was
not.
like, she might have just been hitting me saying, like, "This is my dad."
That's possible. She does that sometimes too.
It's probable.
Yeah. Anyway, what were we talking about?
Faith.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. We don't go down rabbit holes.
No, not at all. So what does faith look like today? I guess is the last question we can ask. And that's a very open-ended question because it means a lot of things. To some extent, this is something that I think about Christianity a lot. Like, there are things in Christianity that are universal, right? Like, the plan of salvation is the same for everybody. The way that worship works is the same for everybody. Things like that. But
the way it looks is different.
But the way it looks and
I
the
agree
way
with
that
that.
it affects my day-to-day
Because,
different.
well, so here's the thing. Does God test our faith?
Yes.
Yes. And it's not a test in which
He doesn't tempt us.
Correct.
But he allows
those
things
are
to
two
happen.
very different words.
Yes.
Because
James 1 is very clear. Like,
correct.
God does not tempt anyone, nor is he himself tempted.
That's James 1:13.
Something around there. That's where it starts
I wanna say
talking
it's 13.
about. Yeah.
Because
the next thing he talks about is how temptation
right,
works.
because what he's doing is he's actually testing to see if we are, like, what we're actually dedicated to.
Right. Well, 1 Peter 1 talks about the fact that your faith will be tested.
Right.
But that test will make your faith better.
And so here's the thing. That's going to look different for you and me.
Yeah.
We
have different personalities.
Mhm.
We have different temptations. We have different relationships with people.
Absolutely.
It's all going to, like, there are variables. It's the same general principle, but it's...
General principle.
I hate you. But it looks different for every person.
Right. Because, again, every person is, it's kind of like the whole idea of the snowflake analogy. Every snowflake is
unique.
Yeah. It's the same with every creature
they all
that
look
God
the
created.
Same
right.
From a, like, broad perspective.
Right, from the bird's eye view.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with every piece of God's creation.
Yeah.
Right. Everything is similar, but very unique in its own way.
Yeah.
Me and my brother are very, very alike. We look very different,
That's
but
true.
we're very alike. You and me, we actually look more alike than me and my brother do. But
Weirdly.
again, we're also very different.
Mm-hmm.
So it's where our faith is tested is also, it also depends on where we are in our walk of faith.
Yes. And I think that concept demonstrates the fact that while individual faith in Christ is necessary, the church is also necessary. And the reason I say that is when you come to the collective body of the church, right, what are you going to find? You're going to find people who struggle with things similarly to you. Like, you're going to find people who have similar temptations to you.
Yeah.
And you're going to find people who would never be tempted by X in their life, right? There are things that don't tempt me that do tempt you or somebody else here at Westside, and vice versa.
Yep.
Right. So both having people who struggle with the same thing and having people who don't strengthens your faith in different ways.
It's a collective effort.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole point.
That's 1 Corinthians 12.
Right.
Every member of the body has a function, and they all work together to strengthen the whole.
Because it revolves around the idea of accountability.
Yes.
And Jesus set that up perfectly. He knew what he was doing when he established his church. He knew...
He kind of had a plan for the thing.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Like before the foundation of the world or something. I read that in like Ephesians 1 or whatever.
That's what I tell my students when they're like, when that light bulb goes off and they're like, "Oh, that's what you meant," and they're like, "Yeah, it's like I know what I'm talking about."
Right? Yeah.
Crazy.
It's like Jesus has a plan for his church. What?
Yeah. Same thing with football. Like, "Oh, that's why we have to do this." It's like, yeah,
right.
It's like I thought about this. Crazy. God knew what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus knew what he was doing. And it's a collective effort to where we're all working together. How do I say this? It's all very different looking parts of a collective machine.
Yeah. I mean, again, members of the body. You can also use modern, like...
all right. So you knew BJ.
I did.
Briefly. I knew him for a good chunk of my life. I was 8 when I first met him.
BJ's the man.
BJ, passed away not too long ago, but
almost 2 years now.
Yeah. He was a wonderful example.
Yes.
He was a wonderful example as a Christian. He was a wonderful example as a friend, as a father, as a husband. And I miss him a lot. And he used illustration when he gave
object lessons, and things like that.
There was one time where he grew his beard out for over a year, and then part of the lesson
was he shaved it.
He shaved it.
Yeah.
And I was I think there were like 3 or 4 people that knew what he was going to do before he did it.
Mm-hmm. I didn't. I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Like he had told me when he first started growing the beard, when he got 3 inches from his face, I'm like, dude, you ever going to trim that thing? And he went, actually. Mm-hmm. And so he told me about it. And so I knew it for, I don't know, 10-ish months.
Yeah.
I wasn't there for that lesson. So he gave it at camp.
That's right. You weren't there.
He gave it at camp, and I had to go to a 7-on-7 tournament for football.
It wasn't camp. It was
the
year that we did
it was the
summer field days instead of camp because we were still getting over COVID and things like that. So he did it at one of those.
And I had a football obligation that I had to attend.
Yeah. Because it was the one at Christiansburg. I remember that.
Hated that. There was one time where he took a bucket of mud, splashed it on his face.
I was not there for that one.
No, that was before. Yeah, that was before you were around.
Yeah.
There's
the one where he got the Goliath stilts.
That was
made himself as tall as Goliath.
That was before you got
Bible.
there.
Yeah. I've seen pictures of that one though.
Because he wanted to show how big Goliath actually was.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you read it and you're like, oh wow, that guy's really tall.
Right.
But then you get
BJ's not a small dude, but he was
maybe like an inch shorter than me.
Right. So about my height. And he's a good 3.5 feet off the ground.
Yeah. It was massive.
Yeah.
Anyway, but there was one lesson that when I can't remember if he had just become a part of the staff and I was still a camper, or if he was an older camper and I was obviously younger, but it was many years ago. He gave a lesson on how to operate as a church. And the example that he used was, so he's really big into cars. His dad and he worked for NASCAR. Yeah. They worked at the drag strip, all that. So he really knows cars. He knows how they work, all that. And the example that he gave was the church is an engine. And in order for an engine to work, there are multiple cogs that need to click together and to rotate in order for it to actually function correctly. We are cogs.
Yeah.
And if one of those cogs doesn't operate correctly, the engine is going to stall, it's going to lock up, and your car is not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. That's a very good one.
And that, I'm telling you, that was 15-ish years ago.
Yeah.
Plus, maybe. And that's always stuck with me to how the functionality of a church.
Right.
Because it's true.
Every piece works together for the whole.
It does. It can't just be the elders.
Not just for the whole, for the mission.
It can't just be the elders. It can't just be the youth. It can't just be the men. It can't just be the women. It's everybody working together to glorify God.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
And all of that together, full circle, here we go. All of that together is rooted in faith.
Yep. Individual Christianity falls apart without faith. The church falls apart without faith. It's the same thing.
Yep.
And biblical faith, not just the I believe in God.
Yeah, the reiteration of that is important because
by faith Moses did this. By faith Abraham did this. And I'll find this because this is one of my favorite. It's probably my favorite chunk of Hebrews 11, just sort of as a scripture to end on, because it elaborates again on the faith that all of these people had. So it's Hebrews 11, starting in verse 13. These all died in faith, not having received the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar, and having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. For people who speak thus make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been thinking of that land from which they had gone out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they desire a better, that is, a heavenly country. Therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city. Mm. What's the point of faith? The point of faith is that it guides us home.
Yeah.
The way Paul says it in 1 Corinthians 5:7 is we walk by faith, not by sight.
Yep.
Faith is our way home.
And because we can't see it, that's kind of the whole point.
Yeah.
Well, Luke, I hope that you had as much fun as I did
Always.
with this episode.
Naturally.
It brought up a lot of good ideas. It brought up a lot of good factual points.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave us an opportunity to talk about BJ,
which is always a win.
If you listen, and you knew BJ, or at least knew who he was, that was a blessing. Amanda, Buddy, all y'all, if you're listening, one, thank you. But two, we loved BJ. I still have the original wristband. I haven't taken it off.
Yeah.
It's this black one right here.
Yep.
So
we love BJ and we love all of you.
Yeah. And that right there, try not to. That right there is Christianity in a nutshell.
That's the family.
That's the love that Jesus had for us, has for us. That's the love that we have for him, and that's the love that we have for each other. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're going to end it on that. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Yep.
And we will see you in 2 weeks.